Hey there, this is Carlos again with another video on numerology. This time the video is on the number 7, his soul's urge, outer expression, and full name. As always, SU, FN, and OE for short. And yes, that was in a different order, just to be sure if you're paying attention or not. So hopefully you can forgive my awkward sense of humor. But anyways, 7 has been called, and I agree, that it's a number of sacrifice. I also believe that is too harsh or too critical, because 7 of the numbers on the physical plane is the one I have the most respect for, because 7 is willing to practice what he preaches. He applies his own knowledge as he does something, and that leads to authenticity. Whereas 4, which is on another video, is incredibly dogmatic. It needs things to be spelled out and is only usually willing to follow well-established rules as well as their immediate leader. And to use a book, which it's unusual for me. Usually I am able, once I pick up a book, to finish it and read it from cover to cover. And this is true even when it comes to numerology and astrology, which have been referred to as cookbooks. But this one series, there's a character who thinks outside of the box by disobeying his commanding officer. And even though this led to him saving numerous lives because of his disobedience, he still got punished by his leader. That book was the first example of me skipping over numerous pages, because the character had a brother. If I had found out my brother in real life had that happen to him, especially if I was more powerful than the leader that punished him, that leader would never even find out what hit them. Because one of our greatest gifts and has to do with knowing where we stand and being authentic. And any leader who seeks to stifle that, I don't believe is worthy of our respect. Now, granted, there's a huge line between what I'm tempted to do and what I would actually do. And even if I had all the power in the world, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be as vindictive as I'd like to be. But I show this example not to talk about myself, but instead to compare the difference between 7 and 4. 7 is willing to take that stand and do what is right for the community, whereas 4 would be like, okay, I deserve this punishment. And because of this, because they're less willing to be that blindly obedient, they're more likely to sacrifice. And according to at least a handful of numerologists that I've read up on, they would say they suffer needlessly. Me being an optimist, I would say by suffering needlessly, that discredits Seven's ability to see that silver lining, to know why they disobeyed in the first place. So the reward defines this number just as much as the risk does. And hopefully I've done a good job of explaining this aspect of why just focusing on the sacrificed is only half of Seven's definition. Now, in regards to the number himself, there are, or rather, I will only mention 3 strengths, and if I do my job well, 3 weaknesses associated with this number. The first strength, as I said before, is by applying knowledge in their own way that leads to authenticity. And actually, that's 2 strengths right there if you look hard enough. One is being more authentic. Another is learning by doing. And the third is just thinking outside the box. Now, as far as the weaknesses go, if one only does things their own way, that makes it very hard to learn new lessons. And that is one of the potential weaknesses associated with 7. And that's when 7's definition goes from thinking outside the box to suffering needlessly, is by being too hard to obey others. One may not learn the lesson that one needs to learn. Another potential weakness is not thinking things through, being too impulsive. And the third has to do with a strength I didn't mention earlier, which is 7 loves to teach. He has learned much by doing things and applying them and wants to share that knowledge with the world. However, because he is reluctant to follow other people's leads, he can come across as a hypocrite. And hypocrisy is definitely a weakness. And it can lead to feeling entitled, which is something I know I've dealt with on my own. And hopefully by saying that and acknowledging it, I'm a little bit less of a hypocrite than I otherwise would be. Now, in regards to the soul's urge, this aspect represents what a character or a person longs for. And if 7 is a symbol for one of your characters in a book, then he or she would long to learn by doing. And as they do more and apply that knowledge, they resonate more strongly with the number 7. And 7, the Spirit then blesses that character in various ways by knowing what works and what doesn't. Whereas if it's their outer expression, then that is how the audience of the book or movie or whatever medium views this character, as well as various characters within the book. They see somebody who is willing to sacrifice, hopefully for the greater good, but it could also be for their own selfish gain. They would see an unwillingness to follow others' leads, and hopefully someone who is willing to help others out and teach through example or through their words. And lastly, there's the full name, or FN for short, and that has the most voting power when it comes to a character's job. 7s are good with their hands, which may mean they're a good masseuse. They could be a good athlete. They could also be a good chiropractor or even a butcher. Pretty much any trade is open to this sort of person, because pretty much every job, like plumbers, electricians, all require manual dexterity. And that's part of the reason why I love numerology in the first place, because sometimes it's hard to spark my own imagination. And by imagining a character within a workplace, now I have a setting, and it's that much easier to think about their ordinary world and what needs to be done to break them out of that rut so they can be even more authentic. And hopefully this video has sparked your interest both in my videos. So if you like it, subscribe it, upvote it, or rather like it. And most of all, these videos are not just about me. It's my attempt to helping you find your voice. And one of the easiest ways to share your voice with the world is by writing either comments or writing your book or even creating your own videos so that all this makes sense. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and for those of you who are wondering why I'm wearing a suit, it's because in the past I've worn this suit. People seem more receptive to my ideas, a little bit more willing to listen. So call it an experiment to find out if you're that kind of person. And if you hate it, feel free to put that in the comments. Just do so in a somewhat either respectful manner or in a joking manner. I usually am a pretty good audience when it comes to jokes. And like I said, I hope this day finds you well, and I look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you. Carlos out.